Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back to the big debate. Should we introduce legislation to outlaw caste discrimination in the UK? This is what we're talking about today. You've already heard from some speakers, you've heard from our presenters, some very heated discussion points, debate. So let's continue with the debate. Just before we go to the audience, I'm just going to give each one of our speakers just a minute, just if you want to respond first, just to pick up any points, but just 1 minute, yeah? And then we'll go to Apinderjit.
I'm quite happy to give away this paper to anybody. What I didn't say was the dialogue was the only way forward. I said we need to have a process of consultation and dialogue, so we have all the stakeholders behind any process of resolving these issues. And if legislation is the way forward, then we will all agree legislation is the way forward. That's important. And secondly, I did mention the Coventry conference, and I was there. I didn't say NISA didn't consult, I said the government didn't consult. It's up to the government when it introduces legislation to have a process of consultation, which it didn't engage in this time. So you saw even some of the most heated issues such as Gay Marriage Act was consulted with the communities before they introduced legislation, and it has a wider endorsement. Okay? Lastly, I don't agree with the SGPC thing. SGPC has a policy that in the local gurdwaras, there's out of 4 executive members, there's always one from the so-called scheduled castes. There is if the president is something, the vice president always comes from what the Indian constitution describes as scheduled caste. Oh, please don't interfere.
No, I'm not interrupting.
I think I'm already want to engage in the debate.
Is that your last point?
No. And the essential point I'm making is, I'm not saying there were no varnas, I'm not saying there's no jatis. The conflation of two is the word caste. And until we start looking at that, we cannot resolve this.
Is this not just a semantic? Are you just playing with semantics?
I'm not playing semantics.
Okay.
I'm not playing semantics. It's the equivalent of, as I said in my article, somebody coming here and saying Scottish clans, Welsh tribes and English classes are all races. They're not races. Jatis are different. There are 25,000 jatis recorded in the Indian caste systems, 25 jatis. Now, who come and where, etc. There have been a lot of disputes in the census forms. Which jati comes under what level when the British were creating the consensus form?
Right. Okay.
If they were established systems, they wouldn't have had any disputes.
Apinderjit, 1 minute.
I'd like to pick up on your point. Earlier on, you made the point that people have forgotten about what caste they belong to, especially the generation now. That's a huge generalisation. People haven't forgotten about their caste. Only a few days ago, I heard a disturbing account of 2 children on a primary school playground, where one young girl asked the other girl if it was okay for her to play with her because she was of a different caste to the other girl. So to say people have forgotten their caste is absolutely absurd. And then, you made the point earlier on as well about the whole British legislation, etc. We must remember that the laws of Manu existed many, many centuries before this. And it's in the laws of Manu that prescribe distances between castes. Can
I just ask one point? I mean, you're absolutely right that those prejudices are there, but those prejudices around class are there. You find it all the time in the House of Lords, even in the playgrounds. But the logic of your argument is that we should have a law against class discrimination as well.
Yes, I mean, if we're talking about the British class system, it works very differently to the Indian caste system.
But we talk about chavs, we talk about, these people who are... So it happens, doesn't it? So isn't the logic then we have a legislation against the class system?
Well, we should have legislation against any kind of. We should have legislation against any kind of discrimination.
Okay. Okay. Let's go back to the other. Jagjit Singh Jaggi from One Sikh No Caste organisation. Jagjit Singh ji, you've got a minute.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Just kind of a answer to Dr. Rai's saying that the Varan Jati. Caste is the English word, so there has to be some Indian word describing caste. Caste is the English word.
Just keep your mic.
And you're just kind of playing with the words there. Varun Jati it's the same thing. Ikkoi bala da na aya, oda head hai the pooch. Asi pooch nu kyo fad ke rakhe baithe hain haje tak bhi. Te ਐਵੇਂ तो लोकां ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਖੰਡ ਕਰੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਲਾਸ ਦੀ ਪਾਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ we recently had a case when policeman was called pleb.
Yeah.
Right? And look what happened. Minister has to resign. So class
no,
is the issue as well.
You're making just there's point. he had to resign because it was such an unacceptable thing to
Exactly.
say.
So
There's no legislation there.
So exactly. So we need to have legislation here as well.
But there was no legislation.
And
He resigned because it was unethical. It was something that was seen as to be unacceptable.
Wrong is wrong anyway.
Yeah.
Wrong is wrong. And I'd like to come to the point that even a Sikh pracharak, you see them on media and everywhere, they are actually using that. I was surprised. I was shocked that I had an argument with someone and said that Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which Jat Paat nu badhawa dinde, Gurwani do that. Guruan ne badhawa ditta Jat Paat nu, and I argued with him. And that guy is on the media every day. I'm ashamed that Sikh preachers are saying that.
Okay, what about lastly, because there's a legislation. Should we have some legislation? That's the key thing.
Right. As I said, like it's a good effort by Caste Watch UK to bring caste legislation in the UK in its final stages. Even though it makes no sense to carry on being part of the caste system that disadvantage you. A complete abolition of the ancient degrading practice would have to happen in the future.
Jaggi, have you got a caste?
No. But
so on what basis would you defend yourself then?
Answer the question. I got a caste given to me by my parents, but I like to abolish their caste. I like to abolish my surname.
But the argument is by creating legislation, you will be put into that caste for centuries to come.
Right. Let me come to that point. We, the so-called followers of Sikh religion, not only have failed to grasp the fundamentals of Sikhi, but managed to alienate millions of potential Sikhs due to our attachment to the caste. How dare we can call ourselves unique, yet deny completely that we have any problem with the caste issues. I was really shocked to see when being interviewed by Dr. Roy on the caste issues, the Jathedar of Akal Takht had completely whitewashed the allegation of injustice of caste practice in Sikhs. In fact, very hypocritically, he quoted from the Gurbani that we all are equal, and yet in the same breath, he talked about lower caste Sikhs and higher caste Sikhs.
Okay, Jaggi, I think you've made your point there. Thank you very much.
Because
I want to give other people a chance.
For a solution, I'm too long to give you a solution for this, please. And it's a very, very sad reflection on his part. You are only fooling yourself, not anyone else. This denial of an existence of caste in Sikhs is the reason I support this legislation.
Okay.
Last bit is.
We haven't got time for a speech now, please. Yeah?
Can I say one sentence, please?
One sentence only.
Right. What Guru Gobind Singh did in 1699, he formed the Panj Pyare, and then it's an act of humility he displayed by getting on his knees. First he created the equality, then he got onto the knees to show the humility and asked for Amrit Pan himself, right? And Guruji wasn't asking their caste and surnames. In fact, Guruji blessed them with the name Singh, and Guruji himself became Singh from Rai, and yet you still call yourself Dr. Rai.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hanji, let's just... okay, Hanji, stand up, yeah? Stand up. We will come. Let's give some of the young people, because we haven't, and then we will come to you.
Hi, my name is Poonam Sangre, and I'm training to be an RE teacher in Birmingham. I did my undergraduate at University of Wolverhampton. I did it on the Ravi Dasya Society because I myself am from the Ravi Dasya community. And as I've been growing up, I've been living in Wolverhampton, and I can see how many different caste-based gurdwaras there are within Wolverhampton. And as a teenager, I've always been going to the Guru Ravi Das Gurdwara. However, I think to eliminate caste system, how we can go forward is through focusing on the teachings of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji and focusing on what our gurus have said.
Do we need legislation? I mean, nobody disagrees with that point, and we all agree. But do we need laws, or is it enough to have our teachings?
I think obviously going through, because we've got the teachings there, but there's caste gurdwaras in society, so obviously no one's really focusing on the teachings.
So we need laws then?
So with laws and legislations, we can help caste discrimination.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there any more young person around there, some of the women, and then we will come to the views around here. Hanji.
My name is Lovepreet Kaur, and I'm a PhD student of a Pindaji Kaur. And I agree with the Pindaji about the legislation.
You would, because she's your supervisor?
Yeah, just because of that. No, because as I'm a student at University of Wolverhampton, as a young person, a lot of people, a lot of students that I know, they want to get married to a person from different caste, but their family disagreeing with it. At least they can turn to the law that it is there for them. So that's the point that I wanted to make.
So they have some protection.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? We have a young lad here.
Hi, I'm Jay Langley. I'm a postgraduate student, and I'm looking at caste, but predominantly in secondary school education.
Okay.
I'd just like to argue the point that I do think legislation is important. The reason for that is I don't think that you can deny that caste discrimination don't exist in Britain. I think if you're going to argue semantics, I just think that, yeah, it may be troublesome to define caste, but I don't think you can argue that the manifestations of what caste may be don't exist, because numerous reports, whether it be from the government, whether it be from Caste Watch UK, indicate to the fact that caste discrimination does exist. Therefore, I believe legislation will set in motion the dilution of caste discrimination in the UK. But I don't necessarily think that legislation is enough. I think we need to combine legislation with education and work legislation and education together, whether it be through curriculum, which curriculum at the moment, may I add, is very flawed when looking at the caste within Hinduism, and try and look at a way using legislation and education together to try and make headway in this debate.
Can I just bring the mic back to Arjun, because I want to try and give a balance, because quite a lot of people arguing against. You've heard some of the debate there, and some very powerful arguments against your position. How would you respond just in a minute, and then we'll go to this side?
But just, I want to clarify one thing. When Upendrajit said that there is no discrimination, I didn't say there is no significant, because Hindu Forum did carry out their research going around the country, but we didn't find very significant amount. And that's why we propose the government will work with education to eradicate. And like Jasdev said, if there is a need, we'll sit around the table and have a legislation there as well. And one thing I just want to clarify to the viewers and people here, the Hindus don't have caste-based temples in this country. This is news to me about the Sikhism, where I'm hearing, but Hindus don't have particular caste temples. Everybody go to anybody's temple there. That's all I want to say.
Okay, Arjun, can I bring the mic over here, because I did promise, so if we can, and if you just stand up, do you want to? Haan ji, khade ho jao.
Yeah, okay. Jai Gurdev, Jai Bhim, Namaste. My name's Raj Ratu, and I'm a human rights activist in Birmingham. If you don't think caste discrimination is relevant in the UK, you need to read some of the matrimonial ads in some of our newspapers and see the adverts, hundreds of castes in newspapers here in the UK. So you're living on a totally different planet to what I face on a day-to-day basis. You talk about labelling. I was labelled, not by myself, but through discrimination and casteism at a very early age. I knew my caste as a Jamar from a very early age because of people like yourselves or community organisations who are perpetuating caste discrimination. Legislation is important because if you look at race discrimination, sex discrimination, legislation was fundamental in changing people's actions first. Yeah, so this is why legislation is crucial.
What would be the practical? I mean, would for example, the adverts become illegal? And is that the kind of thing that you're looking for these things to be banned?
It's a very good question, and I don't know the answer to that.
So what is the legislation for then?
Legislation is to stop overt caste-based discrimination on the TV channels, on the radio stations, in some of the Punjabi music, especially. You know, quite shameful lyrics coming out of the Punjabi music based around caste discrimination. You know, we should be...
Okay, but that seems like censorship, and we wouldn't want to go...
Censorship. It's talking about human rights and dignity. Respect me as a human being. Don't put me down because that makes you feel higher. You know, that's wrong. This is something that we need to... It's all about human rights and dignity and self-respect.
Okay.
That's what we're asking for. And those organisations that are opposing us, I'm telling you, we got a new generation now. You know, of the Dalits, of the untouchables. We're not going to tolerate caste discrimination anymore. We're telling you that now on Sikh TV, on all the people who are opposing this legislation. It's a new generation.
Okay, Raj, you've had a very good go there, and let's hear from everybody.
Hello, I'm Ravi Kumar. Listen, I'll tell you what this is about. This is about the victim in the classroom, in the university, in the workplace, who is being discriminated, and it is affecting their confidence, their self-esteem, and they're being bullied and victimized. This is for them so that they have a course that they can report this and get protection, because as British citizens, which is what you are, we live in a democratic society, we pay our taxes, and we are born in this society. We should not tolerate any discrimination from anybody. All of the research conducted has overwhelmingly proved that caste discrimination exists. Yeah, and the issue here is the discrimination. If you want to practice your caste preference in what you do, that's your choice. You can do that. But you don't have a right to discriminate against anybody else. The legislation is the only way forward. government has analysed this. They went into a cross-section of society and they looked at different communities and they found that, and their view and their recommendation was that legislation is the only way forward.
Thank you very much. I want to just get, because we only got about 4 or 5 minutes, so I want everybody to have 30 seconds each if you can, yeah?
I think we've been talking about the definition. Doesn't matter which definition you use, casteism is casteism, right? It's the same like over racism. We had a long debate in this country. What is racism? And people have been trying to shy away from. I remember when I came to this country in 1960 as an Indian. I didn't know I was Sikh, but I didn't know about the caste system. But I know how I was discriminated. Nobody listened to me. 1965, the first Station Act came in to stop us, which was stop us from going to buildings and places and so on.
We haven't got time for the history lesson. Literally, we've got 4 minutes.
Sex Discrimination Act, 1970 Equal Pay Act. And even today, this morning, we're talking about women are not getting the same pay. I think this is not the only answer.
You think we should have law? Okay, can I just have Dr. Pogal Saab again? Just 30 seconds, Dr. Pogal Saab.
I mean, we talk about
time both cut here.
Let me check. I mean, we have only
the others are going to go after me. You might be happy.
I mean, about a minute. In Sikhism, we talk about equality. I get up in the morning every morning, watch Harmandir Sahib program. I'm looking for when a women group will be singing.
Okay, we are now moving off the topic. Okay, Pogal Sahib,
we have to acknowledge, have a plan of action with commitment.
Pogal Sahib, just 30 seconds. Let's keep. We only got 3-4 minutes left.
Okay. Well, the Sikh Council UK, I'm the spokesman for the Midlands. I don't think we need a legislation. You know, people who are talking, self-evaluate as yourselves. What are you doing with yourself? Look inside yourself. We are against the discrimination of any sort. However, the research undertaken by the government is flawed and it's not consulted on widely, and what we are asking for is look into it and spread it widely so we can actually look at it sensibly.
Can we just get the mic to at the back here very quickly again, if everybody can keep to 30 seconds.
I think, look, the issue, the academic obfuscation that was introduced by Dr. Rai about the definition of caste, well, that reminds me of the definition of race. There is no scientific definition, there is no scientific acceptance of race. Nevertheless, discrimination on the basis of race exists. And the reality is this: the stink of caste discrimination, the stink of humiliation that human beings, particularly children, feel all around us is so pervasive that you can't ignore it. And by the way, I also take issue with your starting point, which is that we all believe that there should be no caste discrimination. If we all believe that, we wouldn't be sitting here.
Okay, good point, Anjavir ji. And then we'll come to the...
मैं भगवंत सिंह भारती मजदूर संघ ਵੱਲੋਂ बेकारिया साहब ਤੇ ਰਾਏ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਤ ਪਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ
ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ
ਚਲੋ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਰੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਤਾਂ ਇਹੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਪਰ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਮਾਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਚੂੜੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਰਵਿਦਾਸੀਏ ਤੇ ਜੱਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਉਦਾਹਰਣ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਨੰਬਰ ਪਲੇਟ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਟੀ-ਸ਼ਰਟਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਲਿਖੇ ਜੱਟ ਦਾ ਘਰ ਲਿਖੇ ਤੋਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਬੇਕਾਰੀਆ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕਿ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਤਾਂ ਪਾਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਸਹੀ ਆ ਪਰ ਇੱਥੇ ਹਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਕੇਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ ਨਾਲ ਰੋਲ ਲੜਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਮੇਰਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਉੱਥੇ ਚਮਾਰ ਦੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਣ ਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਜੱਟ ਦੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਣ ਦੇ ਇਹ ਹਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਕੇਸ ਨੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੋਜ਼ ਲੜਾਈਆਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ
ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆ
ਲਾਸਟ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਲਾਸਟ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਕੁਐਂਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਾਤ ਪਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਉੱਚੀ ਜਾਤ ਦੀ ਔਰਤ ਨੇ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਾਤ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਨਰਸ ਸੀ ਉੱਚੀ ਜਾਤ ਦੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਾਤ ਦੀ ਔਰਤ ਨੂੰ ਲੁਧਿਆਣਾ ਤੋਂ ਨਾ ਕਰਤਾ ਇੱਕ ਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਥੋੜਾ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਮੈਂ ਬੱਚੀ ਨੂੰ can we get to the young woman ਹਾਂਜੀ if you stand up
I just want to say I do agree with legislation. I totally agree with the Pinchit. Personally, as a Sikh, from my perspective, my daughter was at school again at secondary school. She was asked by a boy, "What is your caste?" Again, she said, "We don't have a caste because we're Sikhs." And because she goes, "Go home and study your religion. You're obviously not a Sikh." Again, there was no reason for what was the reason for to be asked the caste? Obviously, it clearly exists. Personally, I've been asked at social events in the Gurdwara what my caste is.
Sometimes so you think there should be laws?
And the subtle approaches like what's your surname, what's your bind, what's the obviously it clearly exists and legislation will only help.
Thank you.
Obviously,
thank you very much. We are
going to be obstacle.
Running out of time. So can Virji next there just have a quick
my name is Gagan from I'm from Ravdas Association Coventry and Warwick. And ਸਾਰਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨਮਸਤੇ ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਐਂਡ ਜੈ ਗੁਰਦੇਵ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੋ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਲੋ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਰੈਮੇਡੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਕਾਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜੋੜੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਪਰ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਰੈਮੇਡੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਹਾਲੇ ਤੱਕ ਰਿਮੂਵ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਕੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਸਟ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਊਗਾ ਨੋ all human everybody got their right to join anything or practice anything so ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਪਰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਐਕਸੈਪਟ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਾਤ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜੇ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਲੋ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਰ ਕਰੇ
ਮੇਰਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਲੋਕ ਜਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਲੋਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ
ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਦੀ ਜਾਤ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਾਤ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਹੈਗੀ ਨਾ ਇਹ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਸੋ ਇਟ ਮੀਨਸ ਕਿ ਜਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖੀਜ਼ਮ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਊਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹਿੰਦੂਇਜ਼ਮ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਊਗਾ
ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਰੱਖ ਲਿਆ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕੋਲ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਡਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਮੁੱਕ ਗਿਆ ਸੋ ਜਸਟ ਲਾਸਟ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਐਵਰੀਬਾਡੀਜ਼ ਹੈਡ ਅ ਚਾਂਸ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ਾਰਟ ਰੱਖਿਓ
ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ
ਜੀ ਜੀ ਮਾਈਕ ਥੋੜਾ ਅੱਗੇ ਕਰੋ
ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਕੋਡ ਬਿੱਲ ਤੇ ਬਹਿਸ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਬਾਬਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਅੰਬੇਡਕਰ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਕੋਡ ਬਿੱਲ ਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਊ ਉਹਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਊਂਗਾ ਉਹਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਇਹ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਕੋਡ ਬਿੱਲ ਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਰਾਮ ਕਿਸੇ ਸੀਤਾ को बनवास नहीं दे सकेगा ਉਹ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਕੋਡ ਬਿੱਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਿਵ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਦੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਤੇ ਔਰ ਨਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਤੇ ਬਹਿਸ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਅੰਬੇਡਕਰ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਪਿਆ ਕਿ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਕੋਡ ਬਿੱਲ ਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਰਾਮ ਕਿਸੇ ਸੀਤਾ को बनवास नहीं दे सकेगा ਉਹ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਾਸ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਅੱਜ
ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਅੱਜ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਯੂਕੇ ਚ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੁਣ ਟਾਈਮ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ one final point I just want to make what will legislation do now what legislation is going to do there are two sides to legislation punitive side and educational side will educate people caste discrimination no longer acceptable form of behavior we as campaigner are looking at that side of it
okay I think can we just go to the back because kafi der mere veera ne just a couple of sentences each and then we're going to go to the summing up
600 years of prognosis and diagnosis time to legislate our youth committing suicide time to legislate open the debate across all cultures Jaswinder Singh Wolverhampton Interfaith
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਭਜਨ just two sentences ਭਜਨ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ legislation is part of the solution and it's naive to think it's the answer Jay you hit the nail on the head it's education dialogue legislation as well and there's nothing wrong with Sikhism and there's nothing wrong with Tan Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji it's the individuals and the people that need to change not our dharma or the faith
okay so upon okay last ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਸ just 20 seconds then we're going to finish
ਨਾਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵੈਰੀ ਮਚ ਫॉर ਗਿਵਿੰਗ ਮੀ ਦ ਟਾਈਮ ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਭਾਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਨੋ ਸਿਗਨੀਫੀਕੈਂਟ ਕਾਸਟ ਡਿਸਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਥੋੜੇ ਦਿਨ ਹੋਇਆ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੀਵੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖ ਭਾਈ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਾਸਟ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਧਾ ਘੰਟਾ ਲਾਤਾ ਕਾਸਟ ਦੀ ਡੈਫੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ there are no boxes to tick ਕਿ ਫਲਾਣੇ ਦੀ ਕਾਸਟ ਕਿਹਦੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਕਾਸਟ ਕਿਹਦੀ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਖੋਲ ਕੇ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਸੱਚੇ ਦਿਲ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਕਰੀਏ you will see that the research is not flawed and ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਤੱਥ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆ ਜਾਣਗੇ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ
ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਮੈਂ I'm going to give you 1 minute each and we're going to lose the feed otherwise
one thing we need to be sure that the legislation is not going to stop gurdwaras being called Ramguriya Gurdwara, Ravidasi Gurdwara, etc. Let's get that point. It's also, please let me speak. It will also not stop people refusing to marry into other jats. That legislation cannot interfere in these sort of things. It's only on the workplace. I cannot Vedanti ji was talking with a lot of apologies every sentence. He was apologizing, saying he had to say this, but he was saying this. What he said was, nobody has ever brought this issue. The Kal Tak Sab acts when an issue is brought to it. Nobody has brought this issue to its attention. Lastly, what we are saying is that the Race Act, the Equalities Act, all acts came through a process of consultation to get a wider endorsement and co-option of society. This is the one legislation which was sprung without consultation. We did offer caste watch consultations or a dialogue. I've got a number of emails. We still haven't had a date in 2 years when we are going to sit down and have a dialogue. It's not the first time we've offered dialogue. Many Gurdwaras have said they're willing to sit down, have a dialogue and see how we can resolve this. And then if there is not resolved, we can go to legislation.
Okay,
I would say that any kind of discrimination is wrong. It's an abuse of human rights. So if a law, if a legislation tries to combat that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Okay, so you've heard the arguments. I'm just going to finish by reading from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Bhagat Guru Ravidas Ji di Bani cho, Begumpura Shahr ko now dukh ando nahi tethao. And I'm going to say it in English. I'll just go through it all. Begumpura, the city of sorrow, is the name of the town. There is no suffering or anxiety there. There are no troubles or taxes or commodities there. There is no fear, blemish or downfall there. Now I have found the most excellent city. There is lasting peace and safety there. O siblings of destiny, God's kingdom is steady, stable and eternal. There is no second or third status. All are equal there. That city is populous of eternally famous. Those who live there are wealthy and contented. They stroll about freely. They, just as they please, they know the mansion of the Lord's presence, and no one blocks their way. Gehe Ravidas, the emancipated shoemaker, whoever is a citizen there is a friend of mine. So this is Bhagat Ravidas Ji, Begumpura Shahr ko now. So you've heard the debate, strong views on both sides, a lot of discussion to take place. There will be the debate in Parliament next week and there will be a demonstration. So please participate. These are our democratic rights. I'd like to thank Upinderjit Singh and Dr. Jasdev Singh Wright for their wonderful contribution. I'd like to thank everybody here for your contributions, and we will have further debates on related issues. So thank you for the viewers. And ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਕੋਈ ਭੁੱਲ ਚੁੱਕ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨੀ, ਗੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੇ ਭੁੱਲਣਹਾਰ ਸਭ ਕੋ ਭੁੱਲ ਗੁਰੂ ਕਰਤਾਰ। ਇੱਥੇ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ। ਫਤਿਹ ਬੁਲਾਓ ਜੀ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜੀ।